that Jenny is the villain of Forrest Gump.
How she treated Forrest.
Not great.
Not great. Like, he was always in love with her. It's like, I can be a man, and I'm your man.
Right.
And I went, okay, that's great, but you're just my pal, but I'll take my bra off and kiss you and then run away from you. And then goes off and does drugs and goes with some Black Panther guy and then gets AIDS and says, I'm gonna die, can I come be with you? That's not very kind.
Hello everybody, how are you guys doing? How are you guys feeling? Now let me say something that's gonna make some of y'all uncomfortable, but hear me out. Jenny from Forrest Gump was not the villain.
What? Child, anyways.
And then I'll go even further and say that Jenny was redeemed. Well, she was a redeemable villain, right? And the real villain of the movie was Greenbow, Alabama.
Greenbow, Alabama!
Yep, the environment. The time period and the systems that failed both Jenny and Forrest.
Don't ever let anybody tell you they're better than you, Forrest. If God intended everybody to be the same, he'd have given us all braces on our legs.
Now, if you've already, made up your mind about this is not the video for you. But if you care to listen and just hear me out and see the things that I feel and I think, let's get into this video. If you're already mad, that's okay. Sit with me for a minute and let's talk about this. Now, let's talk about the setting and the frame. Now, people love to say Jenny was toxic, selfish, a user. She broke Forrest's heart over and over again. And yes, Jenny did hurt Forrest. I'm not denying that. Now, there's this saying, but I could be saying it wrong, but it's to err is human, to forgive is divine.
Listen, you promised me something, okay? Just if you're ever in trouble, don't try to be brave. You just run, okay? Just run away.
So this story was never about a perfect woman, right? It was about trauma, survival, and love trying to exist in a place that didn't know how to protect people, Like, let's talk about the real villain, who I believe is Greenbow, Alabama.
Greenbow, Alabama!
I say it like that because it's how Forrest says it. But let's talk about where this story actually takes place, right? Deep South, segregation era, no real child protective services, no mental health support, no safety nets.
When I was a baby, Mama named me after the great Civil War hero, General Nathan Bedford Forrest. She said we was related to him in some way, and what he did was, he started up this club called the Ku Klux Klan. They'd all dress up in their robes and their bed sheets and act like a bunch of ghosts or spooks or something. They'd even put bed sheets on their horses and ride around. And anyway, that's how I got my name, Forrest Gump.
Jenny was living with an abusive father after her mother died, and nobody stepped in. Not a soul, not the community, not the system. And Forrest, he was labeled as slow, and written off immediately. So the only reason he even got a chance at school was because his mom slept with the principal.
Your mama sure does care about your schooling, son.
And that alone should tell you and really make people see, what kind of world they was in. And if you ask me, that world is the villain. Now, let's talk about the hypocrisy, right? About Forrest. Because let's be real. They said Forrest was too slow for school.
Now, this is normal. Forrest is right here. The state requires a minimum IQ of 80 to attend public school, Mrs. Gump. He's going to have to go to a special school. And he'll be just fine.
But not too slow for the military. Not too slow to follow orders. Not too slow to win medals. Not too slow to meet the president. And not too slow to build wealth. But suddenly, when it comes, to Jenny, to choosing Jenny, now he's too slow to know better, and I just think that is insane. Like, you can't have it both ways. Either Forrest had agency or he just didn't, And so I think that people really have to think about it. Is he slow? Can we write him off as him just being slow and not knowing any better? But then in the same breath say he can win medals, he can be president. Come on now. Let's really talk about that. And the next thing I would like to talk about is Jenny was the first person to choose him. While people talk bad about Jenny, we have to keep it real. She was the first person to choose Forrest. Before the medals, before the fame, before the money, Jenny was the only kid who talked to Forrest. She defended him. She sat next to him. She saw him, and the most important thing, she told him to run. Run, Forrest, run.
Look, I'm Forrest Gump. Just run away, Forrest. Run, Forrest, run away, hurry.
People think that line is just cute, but here's what hit me personally. Running saved Jenny's life, running away from her father, running away from the judgment, running away, when things got too painful. Running was her survival tool, and she gave that to Forrest. Her voice stayed with him for the rest of his life. And so when people say, well, Jenny just ran away from Forrest, Jenny just ran away from Forrest, y'all don't understand how that was her protection, and she gave that to him, something that he would not have known. He would have stayed, allowed people to bully him, allowed people to treat him any kind of way. She taught him, run, Forrest, run, And another thing I want to talk about is people say she used him. Let's be honest. Jenny was never Forrest's girlfriend. Yup, let's keep it real. She never promised him forever. She never agreed to be with him long term. Forrest chose to love her. And loving someone doesn't mean they owe you permanence. People get mad at Jenny because she didn't choose Forrest the way they wanted her to. But she didn't belong to him, And we need to stop pretending that women owe men access just because they're kind, I just think that that's real. People talk about the intimate scene, and I think we have to talk about that. Let's talk about it from like a trauma lens, right? When Jenny slept with Forrest, I don't see manipulation. I'm sorry, I don't see manipulation. I see a woman who learned very young that men want her body. She didn't understand Forrest's emotional love. She just defaulted to what she knew, and that doesn't make her evil. That makes her traumatized. You got to think about what her father did to her, Forrest chose Jenny for a reason, and everybody tends to forget that. Why did Forrest keep choosing her, Because she chose him first.
Strike him. Strike him. You can't sit here. You can sit here if you want.
Next to Mama, no one ever talked to me or asked me questions.
She didn't pity him. She didn't fix him. She didn't talk down to him. She just talked to him, just talk to him being Forrest, The world told Forrest he was nothing. Jenny never did. And you guys have to see that. Well, at least try to see it. I can't make you do anything, right? Motherhood and redemption. And I think we have to talk about that. By the time we see Jenny again, she's sober, she's working, she's raising her son outside of the system that destroyed her. Her son was with him, with her and her friend, she had a friend that was babysitting, but she had a whole life for her son, Her child was safe, loved, protected. Jenny, kind of became the mother she never had. And I think that matters. And telling Forrest about his son wasn't cruelty, it was clarity. When she she was finally ready after everything, And I think this is the question that no one asks, right? Would Forrest have ever been a father if not for Jenny? When he finds out about his son, he's scared, right? He immediately asks if he did something wrong because the world taught him that he wasn't enough. Jenny had to tell him, you did nothing wrong, She didn't burden him before she was ready. She didn't weaponize the child, It's just not the villain that you guys think she was, That's not villain behavior, The mirror moment, right? And I think that you guys really need to see this part. The mirror moment, I think that this is a big one. Now, let me ask you something. How many of you have a Jenny in your life? Someone who was there early, someone people judge, someone the world says doesn't deserve love. Some of y'all are married to your Jenny. Some of y'all keep going back to your Jenny. Some of y'all are the Jennies. You know, if you don't know like any Jennies in your life, you might be Jenny. And you got someone right now giving you grace, you know, seeing you beyond the worst moments, choosing you when the world didn't. So I just really want you guys to think about this. Jenny was not the villain. She was a woman surviving in a world that failed her, you know, a world that just didn't protect her, you know, a world that protected abusers, you know, discarded beautiful kids, just vulnerable kids, and then blame the woman who didn't survive it quietly. If Forrest Gump has a villain, it's not Jenny. It's the system, you know, the system that broke her, then asked her to be perfect anyways. So that's just how I see it, guys. Let me know what you guys think. I just don't think that Jenny's the villain. I don't know. Thank you. Bye-bye.